So first we'll begin with one question and then we'll proceed further. Critically analyze the extent to which university is a social system. Simple question. Theory you know, you just have to apply. Applied knowledge is very important. Even if they do not ask applied question, although this is a previous year question, but even in theoretical question we should have applied knowledge. Critically analyze the extent to which university. Okay. So let us try to understand how to approach this question. First is of course again social system. We have to identify keyword. Social system is a keyword. University is supportive keyword. Okay. So first, obviously, since the question centers around social system, so first we have to define social. Okay. Once we have defined social system, what we have to do? We have to describe 4 different needs of social system. 4 different needs, that is functional prerequisites, which is AGIL. Okay. And then finally, we have to come to the question, university. University has 4 different needs: adaptive need, goal attainment need, integrative need, and latency need. Okay. Adaptive need of university. What does it mean? University as a system will have to undergo changes with time. It will have to adapt to the external environment. Okay. And what is the meaning of this adaptation process here? whatever university is going to do for its survival, remember this, यूनिवर्सिटी को जो भी करना पड़े अपने सर्वाइवल के लिए वो करेगा. एंड इफ यू नो, यूनिवर्सिटी tries its best to inculcate world best practices across different university, global university, जिसको हम बोलते हैं कि भाई ग्लोबल यूनिवर्सिटी बनने जा रहे हैं, वर्ल्ड की बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस वी आर गोइंग टू इंट्रोड्यूस इन अवर यूनिवर्सिटी. Like, for example, you will see universities these days, since late 2010 onwards, have started introducing courses on environment. Environment के कोर्स कभी होते नहीं थे यूनिवर्सिटी, ये न्यू एंट्री. Courses on cyber security, new entry. Courses on artificial intelligence will be the new course in the coming times, which has already begun in Western universities and will gradually be introduced in Indian universities as well. Okay, today you would not see universities teaching, the same old traditional form of curriculum or disciplines like Pali, Sanskrit, वो सब जा रहा है. यूपीएससी ने हटा दिया पाली. दिस इज अडेप्टिव प्रैक्टिस. अब इन सब चीजों की जरूरत नहीं है. सर्वाइवल करना तो इंग्लिश हैज टू बी मेड कंपल्सरी बिकॉज दिस इज द ग्लोबल एरा. तो इंग्लिश मीडियम यू विल सी proliferating like anything across universities. Okay, so that means whatever universities will be doing, that university is doing only for its survival. Okay, otherwise university will lose its relevance. Okay, so adaptive practices, क्या क्या आ सकता है इसमें? Different specialized disciplines, और क्या आ सकता है? Global practices. For example, centralized library with fully air conditioned environment. Okay, ये भी adaptive practice है. यूनिवर्सिटी में लाइब्रेरी ना हो, क्यों जाएगा यूनिवर्सिटी? ठीक है. इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, ग्लोबल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर. ओके, ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन का सिस्टम. यूनिवर्सिटीज विल हैव टू अडेप्ट टू ऑल दीज थिंग्स. एंड ड्यूरिंग पैंडेमिक, JNU, दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी, ऑल दीज यूनिवर्सिटीज, दे अडेप्टेड टू द ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन. उससे पहले कहाँ होता था? सर्वाइवल के लिए करना पड़ेगा, नहीं तो खत्म हो जाएंगी यूनिवर्सिटी. ओके, ग्लोबल प्रैक्टिसेस लाइक ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन. डिस्टेंस कोर्स, ये भी करना पड़ेगा बिकॉज देर आर वर्किंग प्रोफेशनल्स एज वेल, वो नहीं आ सकते वहां पर. डिस्टेंस कोर्स. ओके, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, ऑल दीज थिंग्स. ये सब क्या एडेप्टेशन है? सर कैन वी से यूनिवर्सिटीज एडेप्टेशन ड्यूरिंग, हाँ तो बोल लिया मैंने विज्ञान शो. ठीक है. गोल अटेनमेंट. एवरी यूनिवर्सिटी हैज अ गोल. अरे हमारा गोल है, कोचिंग सेंटर्स का गोल होता है मैक्सिमम टॉपर्स प्रोड्यूस करें हम. आवर गोल इज टू प्रोड्यूस मैक्सिमम टॉपर्स. ठीक है. सिमिलरली यूनिवर्सिटी हैज अ गोल टू गिव 100% प्लेसमेंट. गोल ही तो है यूनिवर्सिटी. एवरी यूनिवर्सिटी हैज अ गोल दैट वी प्रोड्यूस मैक्सिमम रिसर्च स्कॉलर्स. सबका ये गोल है यूनिवर्सिटी. Every university has a goal that we give this much of fellowship to these many of candidates per year, every year. ये सब goals हैं universities. These have to be addressed. These have to be met. Okay. So goals may you can write many things, and therefore there is no one answer. It all depends on what you write. What you write should be very effective, in the sense should be addressing to the core concept. Adaptation is about survival, so you have written everything related to survival only. कुछ ऐसे बकवास नहीं, ठीक है, कुछ भी लिख दिया. Goal attainment is related to mobilization of resources to fulfill the goal. So it is related to goal attainment. Every university has a goal. Okay. 100% placement. Maximum research scholars. Three, publications. These are goal. And also one of the goal is to get highest rank in NIRF ranking, or global world ranking of universities. Every university would want to see itself in top 100 universities. ठीक है, जिसके लिए different types की ranking release होती है globally. Okay. For example, the Department of Sociology, Social System of JNU comes in top 100 departments of sociology all over the world. Okay. For different reasons. IIT Kanpur comes in top 100 or 200. Okay. IIM Ahmedabad सबका रहता है. Okay. Now let me talk about integration. Integration means a need to resolve the conflict. ठीक है, फैमिली तभी सर्वाइव कर पाएगी अगर झगड़े सेटल करने के लिए मैच्योर लोग हों. If there is no mature people in family, conflict will become the normal. Conflict should not be normal, it should be consensus. That should be normal feature of family. Okay, so we should have some mechanism to ensure that integration is ensured in family, conflict is resolved. Okay, similarly in university we have to ensure that any sort of conflict is resolved within university, and for that we have different mechanisms in university. For example, we have anti-ragging committee. Okay, we have proctor, rector, chancellor, vice chancellor. Okay, different seminars being conducted or different meetings being conducted between them to resolve any sort of conflict, whether it is any dispute between Delhi University and a professor, or student versus Delhi University. For all these things, before they go to Supreme Court, they have internal committees. Okay, to manage all the conflict related to placement, related to core, related to research, thesis, whatever that may be. Okay, student cell, we have student grievance redressal cell. ठीक है, कोई इश्यू आता है तो ठीक करने के लिए. हो गया. Latency. What is the meaning of latency? Anything that motivates individuals, sustains the motivation of individuals and diffuse their attention is a latent need. Okay. In university, we have extracurricular activities. Okay. Sports, cultural events. All these are those things which motivate individual, diffuse their attention. पढ़ पढ़ के दिमाग खराब हो गया है, थोड़ा enjoy कर लिया. सिंगर्स आए हैं, डांस कर लिया, म्यूजिक फेस्ट चल रहा है, थोड़ा सस्टेन्ड मोटिवेशन और टेंशन जो है एकेडमिक उसको डिफ्यूज करने के लिए, ताकि कोई सुसाइड ना करे यूनिवर्सिटी, ठीक है, चुपचाप निकल जाए अपने यहाँ, घर जाके करें सुसाइड, ठीक है। तो ये सब चीजें जो है इंपॉर्टेंट है। लेटेंसी, AGIL, this is how university is a social system. Simple. Okay. Now when you read more and more, you will get to know what extra could also have been added here, but that is something I don't want to describe because अभी वो तुम लोगों ने पढ़ा नहीं है। ओके, बट इतना तो पढ़ा ही है तुम लोगों ने जो अप्लाई करना था, ठीक है। अच्छा, बाय द वे, you must have realized one thing, that there are few things which can be written here as well. Some of the things can be written there as well, है ना? ऐसा फील हुआ होगा। This is something that Robert Merton say, your next scholar, ठीक है, रॉबर्ट मर्टन। बताता हूं मैं उसके बारे में, बट फर्स्ट लेट अस बिड फेयरवेल टू टेलकट पार्सन, ओके, क्योंकि हम फिर कभी आएंगे नहीं इससे मिलने। टेलकट पार्सन, क्या हो गया, ये क्या डाउट है सर, व्हाई वी डिड नॉट मेंशन इकोनॉमी रिलेटेड इन एडेप्टेशन पॉलिटी? वो तो पूरे सोसाइटी के लिए है ना। अभी क्वेश्चन क्या था, यूनिवर्सिटी एज अ सोशल सिस्टम। अभी मैं जो इकोनॉमी, पॉलिटी, लॉ, फैमिली, कल्चर, मीडिया, ये सब तो पूरी सोसाइटी के लिए है। अभी यूनिवर्सिटी है, पूरा सोसाइटी का नहीं पूछा। कैन वी राइट इंटरनेशनल? यस यस, डेफिनेटली वी कैन राइट, ठीक है। International collaboration between different universities is nothing but a step towards mobilizing the resources to fulfill the goal to produce maximum research scholars. Okay. Students union in latency. Yes. Student union डाल सकते हो latency में. Okay. Integration में भी डाल सकते हो. ठीक है. But wherever you put in all those things, first you have to define those words. Adaptation क्या है? Goal attainment क्या है? Integration का meaning क्या है? Latency का meaning क्या है? उसके बाद लिखो. Okay. बस इट शुड मेक सेंस बेसिकली टू द एग्जामिनर, ठीक है। ऐसा कोई सोशियोलॉजिस्ट नहीं बनने जा रहा है यहाँ पे। स्टूडेंट्स यूनियन लेटर, हाँ वो हो गया। ओके, सो यू नो ब्रीफली, टेलकट पार्सन्स is considered as one of the most significant scholars in history of sociology for various reasons. In 1931, approximately around that time only, he had joined Harvard University. Okay, but he joined Harvard University as an economist. Okay, later on he switched to sociology, and there have been many reasons for him to switch to sociology. Okay, but I'll talk about academic reasons mainly. You know, the PhD thesis of Talcott Parsons was on the concept of capitalism. So Talcott Parsons had read capitalism a lot. Okay, and not just capitalism, he had referred Sombart, who was a critique to Marx, something which is not required for your syllabus. Okay, he had read Sombart, a critique to Marx on capitalism. Okay, and he had also been attending conferences conducted by Marianne Weber on Max Weber. So he was very much acquainted with the ideas of Max Weber as well. And he had also pursued his higher studies in London School of Economics, along with many famous anthropologists of those times, like Malinowski, Morris Ginsburg, L.T. Hobhouse. Okay, some of the names that you will confront later on. 1940s, during 1940s, 1940 onward was the time when World War II was going on. Okay, after World War II, basically. That was the time post World War II. And it was also a time when Cold War had already begun. It was a period of Cold War, basically, 40 to 70 onwards. Okay. And at that point of time, America, obviously, its economy, as you know, that it had just recovered from Great Depression. Okay, 1930 onwards. Political crisis was going on. Global supremacy was something that everybody was trying to claim, whether it is Soviet, whether it is USA. It was clash of ideologies that was going on world over. Okay, India had become a part to that clash of ideology. India was asked, किसके साथ रहोगे तुम? हमारे साथ या उनके? So India said, ना इधर ना उधर, हम कहीं और के, which we called as non-aligned movement, NAM. We are neither aligned to capitalism nor aligned to communism. We are mix, कुछ अलग ही हैं हम. Neither of, none of the above, option D. Okay. So this was a period when America was going through all sorts of crises, economic, political. And therefore, to have a person like Talcott Parsons writing on social order was inevitable. The reason why he is always concerned about equilibrium is because he knows that what is the time in which he is writing. And this is why it is always said that we should always understand the context in which scholar is writing that thesis. Because, you know, unlike natural science, social scientists are very much influenced by their social location, context in which they are writing. Okay. And the product, the theories which are the product of their writing are nothing but reflection of the time and space in which the writer is writing about it. Okay. But the problem is, while writing on American capitalism, he was somehow trying to justify the American social system as just and perfect, having maximum adaptive capacity. Okay, since America had gone through so many crises and still it is the great. That shows the powerful adaptive capacity of American society. Somehow he was defending all the time, and it was inevitable, obviously, since he was American, so he had to do it. You know, by the year 1970s, if you remember, I told you that we had the first department of sociology in America. It was the year 1892. Okay. And 1930, you saw Talcott Parson coming in. As an economist, gradually by 40, he had turned fully into sociologist. Okay. And when he had joined as a sociologist, at that point of time, there was confrontation between him and Sorokin. Okay. Sorokin was a critique of American society. He was a Russian American. He was not, pleased with the American capitalist system. And he was critiquing American system. Parson, on the other hand, was justifying, always talking about maximum adaptive capacity of capitalism. So a Cold War was going on right here in the Department of Social Relations. It was initially called Department of Social Relations. It was not called as Department of Sociology. Okay, at that point of time, Department of Social Relation was it. And the system, social system department that they have in JNU is very much based on the idea of the then dispute that was going on, or the then sort of conflict, or then the then sort of academic integration that we had in 1931 in the Department of Social Relations. Department of Social Relations is called as Social Relations because in that department it was not only sociology that was taught, it was department of every discipline: economics, anthropology, sociology, pub ad, okay, philosophy. So it was a department where every discipline was taught, and later on it turned into sociology. Okay, specialized way, because in sociology we deal with everything: philosophy, economics, history, anthropology. Okay, and social system of JNU is like that only. When you enter into Department of Sociology in JNU, you do not see a department of sociology per se. With every door you would see different faculty from different departments. इकोनॉमिक्स का एक फैकल्टी आपको दिख जाएगा, पॉलिटिकल साइंस का दिख जाएगा. सो इट इज सोशल रिलेशंस डिपार्टमेंट, AGIL. Every need is important, and therefore every functional prerequisite have to be there in order for the survival of the system. So you cannot read society holistically unless you have idea of every discipline or every domain: economics, anthropology, all those things. Okay, so his theory of structural functionalism remained dominant till year 1970. Okay, and as you guys know very well that Chicago School in 1892 was not theoretical, it was social reformist. Okay, it had social reform orientation, and here we see in America Parsons coming in, developing theories again just on the lines of European scholars like Marx, Weber, Durkheim. Okay, structure of social action, social system. So that way, here it was completely empiricism, or what we also call as pragmatism. If you remember, this was the initial feature of American sociology. And here again, we had, gone to the era of theorization. And not just theorization, this was an era of grand theorization. Okay, grand theorization. The aim of Talcott Parson was to shift the center of sociology from Europe to America. America being the dominant pool of sociology in the world. Okay, and that is why he integrated everything, micro, macro, all those things, and came up with the grand theory. But in 1970s, this theory declined. Why? Why there was a decline in structural functionalism by the end of 70s? The fact is that structural functionalism was not able to explain conflict. Why and how it was not able to explain conflict? When we have already read strain coming in, disturbing the equilibrium, that is also conflict. Okay, but then we also read how strain is resolved, again equilibrium is restored. So that way we are not really studying conflict, we are only studying equilibrium. Equilibrium is the origin, इक्विलिब्रियम इज द एंड। कॉन्फ्लिक्ट तो ऐसे ही टेम्पररी फेज है, वो तो रिजॉल्व हो जाता है, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट को पढ़ना क्या। तो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट वाज नेवर स्टडीड and was never given due importance under this paradigm, structural functionalism. And then came two very popular sociologists. One was T. Wright Mills, who introduced Marxism in America. Okay, something that was avoided by Talcott Parsons. He introduced Marxism in America. And later on, Alvin Goldner, he joined T. Wright Mills in his critique to structural functionalism. So these two scholars are very important. 1970s was the time when C. Wright Mills and Alvin Goldner had started writing excessively on the critique of structural functionalism. Okay. And C. Wright Mills argued that structural functionalism is teleological and tautological in nature. Structural functionalism is teleological and tautological in nature. What is the meaning of teleology? Teleology क्या होता है? If I ask you to explain chair जो कुर्सी होती है, if I ask you to explain chair, how will you explain chair? You will say chair is used to sit on it. You are explaining chair like this. Achha. Now are you explaining chair here? No, you are not really explaining chair. You are explaining use of chair. फर्क है दोनों में. Okay, right. If I ask someone, explain me fruits, what is this? I do not know, I am from Mars. ये क्या है मुझे नहीं पता. What is this? And the other person is telling me, fruits are used for our survival. We eat it, we live. Again, he is not explaining me what is fruit. Again, he is explaining me the function of fruit. Okay. This is what structural functionalism has done. And this is known as teleological reasoning. When you start explaining effect in the name of cause. Okay. When you get confused between cause effect, I am explaining cause of this, you are explaining effect of this. This is known as teleology. And this is clear cut logical critique of structural functionalism, because this kind of reasoning defies the concept of logic itself. Logic को ही खत्म कर देता है, ऐसा ये वो बात है. What is the function? See, if I ask what is the what is this religion, and he is telling me religion helps to maintain the system, religion gives us values, okay, that will help us to maintain the system as it is, value consensus, shared consensus, all those things, beliefs. Again, he is not explaining me religion, he is explaining the function of religion. Okay. If I ask what is AGIL, different needs which are required for the system, required for the system to maintain itself. So whenever he is trying to explain anything, he has to take help of something else in relation of which this thing is utilized. So that way, this thing in itself is not being explained. He would always have to take resort to some other thing to explain this. And therefore, structural functionalism is teleological because effect is explained as cause. And this defies the laws of logic. Defies यानी break कर रहा है. It is breaking the law of logic. Okay. And therefore, when you are explaining everything in terms of function, you would always talk about positive function. Okay. Everything is functional. There is no space for conflict. Okay. I'm explaining what is chair. You will say chair is used to relax. When you sit on it, you feel relaxed. But the next moment I saw someone using the chair to beat someone. अगले ही मोमेंट मैंने देखा इस चेयर को उठा के मार दिया सर पे किसी के उसने. ये रिलैक्स हो गया क्या वो अब? ठीक है. So he is not explaining me all these things. तो ये तो C. Wright Mills है. And when C. Wright Mills is critiquing Parsons like this, remember C. Wright Mills is having Marxist orientation. Okay. And then comes Alvin Goldner. Alvin Goldner has written one very popular book, which actually was a landmark book in the discipline of sociology. The title of the book was Crisis of Western Sociology. A coming crisis of Western sociology. अच्छा, tautological कुछ नहीं होता है, एक ही बात को कहने के 10 तरीके, इसको बोलते हैं tautology. Okay. आपने 10 वर्ड यूज किए, you have used 10 words, and all those 10 words are depicting similar thing, but you are using 10 different words. And sometimes it is not very clear, is this again used to say the same thing or not? For example, if I say system, sometimes he is referring society as a system, sometimes he is referring university as a system. Okay, अब ये system यहाँ पे किसकी बात कर रहा है, university या society, अब पता नहीं चलता. This is the problem with the writings of Talcott Parsons. Okay, तो मैंने तो यहाँ पे तुमको बड़ा एकदम concise version बताया. When you read Talcott Parsons in original, nobody can comprehend him. Okay. I'll discuss about those things as well later on. Alvin Goldner has discussed crisis of Western sociology. Crisis of Western sociology. What does it mean? That was the name of his book. Crisis of Western sociology. When structural functionalism had declined completely with the introduction of Marxism in American universities, which was introduced by many scholars like C. Wright Mills, Robert Merton also, which is your next scholar. Okay. Then structural functionalism declined as a theory, as a dominant theory. Okay. And this was crisis of Western sociology. Decline of structural functionalism was crisis of Western sociology. Okay. And later on, Marxism also declined. But this is something that I'll explain later on. फिर कभी आगे जाके बताऊंगा. Okay. कि उनकी जगह फिर कौन आया? Functionalism और Marxism की जगह. But functionalism declined. It was not able to deal with conflict, always describing function. Therefore, Marxism came. And this actually explained alienation of sociologists from structural functional paradigm. They were no longer attached with functionalism. They were completely alienated from it now. And now they had entered into a new world era of Marxian sociology in America. Okay. And one of the great names is Robert Merton. Robert Merton. Two 2003. UPSC added him later on. Okay, initially the syllabus of UPSC we did not have Merton or even Mead. Mead was also introduced very later on. Okay. Although Mead is literally useless and UPSC can still think over Mead, okay, and introduce some significant people. Okay, there are many significant sociologists right now. One of them is Anthony Giddens. Okay, he is still alive and giving immense contribution to the field of sociology. Zygmunt Bauman, who recently died 3 years back. Immanuel Wallerstein, कमीर अमीन, बहुत सारे ऐसे सोशोलॉजिस्ट हैं. जोर्गन हेबरमास, वो भी जिंदा है अभी. ओके. तो देयर आर मेनी पीपल व्हिच यूपीएससी कैन इंट्रोड्यूस. उसके लिए जरूरत होती है ऐसे लोगों की एग्जामिनेशन कमेटी में जो वेल वर्स्ड हो इन चीजों से. द प्रॉब्लम, यू नो व्हाट इज द मेन प्रॉब्लम with university teaching? If you look into the process of selection of teachers in universities, okay, you will feel ashamed of yourself. Why? To be very honest, since I have gone through that process, I know. The process, the selection process is about that exam called as NET. Okay, you have to qualify NET, National Eligibility Test. Okay, when you qualify NET examination, you get a license to teach in universities. It is like a driving license. Okay, now you can drive a car. So NET is like a license. Now you have a license. Okay. But if you have JRF along with this license, JRF means fellowship. You get monthly payment of 35,000. Okay. For 5 years. If you have JRF, so it is like सोने पे सुहागा. Okay. जिसको मैं इंग्लिश में नहीं बोल सकता. So NET JRF is the minimum condition that you should fulfill if you want to teach in university. Now what is the problem? I remember when I gave this exam, I got JRF in first attempt only. Okay. And I also went to this Miranda College. Okay. It is a college. It is girls' college. Okay. In Delhi University. And Delhi University annually comes up with a list of potential candidates, okay, that can be interviewed. Okay. And later on what happened? I realized that I should not be joining this position as lecturer or assistant or ad hoc. Okay, this is the position that they initially give, ad hoc lecturer. Okay. What is the problem with university education? The people who are teaching in universities now, at least now, since last 20 years, okay, they know concepts only in objective fashion. जितना उनको पढ़ना था नेट के लिए, जिसका आंसर तैयार करना था, उतना उन्होंने पढ़ लिया और एग्जाम क्रैक करने के लिए, तो दे डू नॉट हैव एनी नॉलेज इन डेप्थ. ओके, तो वो उतना ही बता देते थे. एंड दिस इज ऑल्सो वन ऑफ द रीजन व्हाई इंडियन सोशियोलॉजी इज नॉट डेवलपिंग. ओके, व्हाई इंडियन सोशियोलॉजी इज नॉट डेवलपिंग? यू विल सी लास्ट 3 years back a book was published on top 50 sociologists of the world. Okay, 3 years back only, a book was published on top 50 sociologists. We had no Indian sociologist in that list. भाई सीधी सी बात है, if you want to recruit bureaucrats, you will have very great standards. Okay, very tough examination, and you will be proud to say that it is one of the world's toughest examination. But if you want to recruit teachers, you have very easy examination. भाई टीचर्स को रिक्रूट करना है तो यूपीएससी ज्यादा टफ होना चाहिए वो एग्जाम, क्योंकि टीचर्स ही पढ़ाते हैं. टीचर्स अगर नहीं पढ़ाएंगे, बंदा कैसे कुछ पढ़ेगा जिंदगी में? एनी एग्जाम इन दिस वर्ल्ड, I feel the toughest exam should be to become teacher, not to become bureaucrat. Bureaucrat, of course, it can be, but if it can be, but then why not selection process for teachers? This is the reform that no person is doing. ओके, एजुकेशन में रिफॉर्म की बात करते हो, पहले तो टीचर के रिक्रूटमेंट में रिफॉर्म लाओ, तब एजुकेशन में रिफॉर्म आएगा. व्हेन वी हैव टीचर्स हु हैव नॉलेज, ओके, एंड हु कैन ग्रिल स्टूडेंट्स, ठीक है, तब कुछ होएगा. तो एनीहाउ, let me come to Robert Merton. Robert Merton is, someone who was very much inspired by the writings of Durkheim and Marx, both. Okay. Also Weber. And he was a very heavy critique to Talcott Parsons. Very heavy critique to Talcott Parsons. And therefore, what you can think of Robert Merton is like this. It is Marx, Weber, Durkheim minus Parsons. Minus Parsons. Okay. देखो क्या होता है जब जिंदगी में आपको कोई भी चीज आसानी से मिल जाती है ना, तो यू डू नॉट वैल्यू इट. ओके, व्हाई आई वाज एक्सप्लेनिंग दैट पार्ट is also one of the reason why I do not value university teaching. ठीक है, because I got JRF in first attempt. People who had done sociology in bachelor's, they could not get. Okay, तो मेरे को अपने आप पे प्राउड नहीं फील हुआ, मुझे डाउट फील हुआ इस प्रोसेस पे. ठीक है, और वो इसलिए भी और डाउट फील हुआ क्योंकि ये टीचर्स के रिक्रूटमेंट के लिए ऑब्जेक्टिव पेपर्स होते हैं, एमसीक्यू फॉर रिक्रूटमेंट ऑफ टीचर्स, जबकि उनके लिए रिटर्न होना चाहिए. ओके, तो मेरे को तो चलो मजा आया कि निकाल लिया पेपर, ठीक है, लेकिन बाद में लगता है कि बहुत बड़ा रीजन होता है कि इंडियन सोशियोलॉजी में इतनी एडवांसमेंट क्यों नहीं हुई. मतलब आई फील फॉर दिस डिसिप्लिन बेसिकली. ओके, नॉट फॉर एनीथिंग, बट आई फील फॉर दिस डिसिप्लिन. In top 50 sociologists, we had only one person. On caste, we have lakhs of people who have conducted study on caste. But it was only one person, Louis Dumo, okay, whose name was there on in that list of top 50. Okay. Louis Dumo is also one scholar that you will have to read in paper 2. He was a French person, but he had conducted field study in India. Along with Indology, he was also a field worker. Indology is something that I'll explain later on. Field study. You see, Marx, Weber, Durkheim, Parsons, they are not field workers. They do not go into the field. They simply theorize. Okay. Robert Merton is also not going into the field. But he's talking how and why these kind of theories should not be made. Okay. The theories that you have read on Marx, Weber, Durkheim, he is inspired by their writings, but he is saying that, these are very grand theories. When I read Marxism, Robert Merton says, okay, when I read Marxism, I feel how this theory is going to help me. The problems that I'm facing in my everyday life. Okay, Marxism is a grand theory, and Marxism talks about structures, contradiction within economy, leading to collapse of the mode of production, giving rise to another mode of production, forming two classes. अरे भाई मेरे को जो टेंशन हो रही है रोज रोज, ये सब मैं कैसे समझूं इन सब बातों से? Okay, when Merton says the same thing on Durkheim's functionalism. Okay. Basically, I would say that instead of a critique to all these people, he has actually modified all of them. Modified. And from grand level of theorization that was dominant in Europe and America, he is coming to a middle level theorization. Okay, middle level theorization, which is something that I will explain later on. Abhi, I am just giving you an overview on Robert Merton. Merton is one of the scholars who introduced sociology in University of Cambridge. Okay. University of Cambridge. And he was a student to Talcott Parsons. But Merton says, Talcott Parsons is not the person who I had joined Harvard University for. Okay. He was never the person I had joined Talcott University of Harvard for. I had joined University of Harvard for Spitrin Sorokin. Okay. One day I saw Talcott Parsons coming into the lecture describing one of his theory which I was not able to comprehend what exactly this person is saying in the name of structure of social action. That was a lecture in the year 1931 when Talcott Parsons was giving a lecture on structure of social action to his students. One of the students was Robert Merton. Okay, and Robert Merton was 21 years at that point of time, age at 21 only. Okay, a 21-year person listening to structure of social action straight from the horse's mouth, that is Talcott Parsons. Okay, nobody was able to comprehend what this man is saying. One day Talcott Parsons got this opportunity and he was invited to Cambridge University to explain to the students why we should have sociology development in Cambridge University. Okay, at that point of time there was Department of Sociology in Chicago and Harvard, not in Cambridge. Talcott Parsons came to address the speech. Okay, he explained everything about system, grand theorization. He is explaining all those things to a mass audience who does not know anything about sociology, explaining AGIL, all those systems, grand theorization, economics, psychology, anthropology, pata nahi kya bak raha hai. People got mad. And it is generally believed that in that speech, most of the people had actually gone naked completely naked. That means they had gone completely mad when they listened to Talcott Parsons for the first time. What is that man saying? This is so complex theory. How can we introduce this department in Cambridge? Nobody would be able to understand. And Talcott Parsons had this ambition only to make sociology so complex that nobody can understand it. Okay, this was his ambition. He believed that if physics, the professor of physics can have specialized knowledge that a chemistry student cannot understand. If a chemistry student has specialized knowledge that physics student cannot understand, then similarly sociology should have so complex terminologies that no other student from BTech can understand it. Okay. And Robert Merton was specifically against this kind of thinking. तो बोला था सोशियोलॉजी को बढ़ाना चाहिए. You should think about spreading this subject. तुम तो मार रहे हो इसको. So Robert Merton established sociology department in University of Cambridge. He told to the students, एक आदमी आया था थोड़े साल पहले, भूल जाओ उसको, मैं अब कुछ नया बताने जा रहा हूँ. ठीक है. Now, some of his famous contributions to the discipline of sociology are like this. First, I would say, in fact, one of the great contribution I would say is study on crime, that is criminology. Criminology, very popular discipline in America. Okay, India में तो है ही नहीं ये discipline. You know why we every time since childhood we have seen so many crime documentaries on BBC, National Geography. Okay, secret killers. Okay, उनके ऊपर कितनी डॉक्यूमेंट्री में देखी, वो कहाँ से आई? सब अमेरिका से आई, क्रिमिनोलॉजी से. ओके, ये आइडियाज बड़े फैसिनेट करते हैं हमें बिकॉज द वर्ल्ड ऑफ क्राइम इज अ वर्ल्ड दैट वी ऑलवेज अवॉइड. We stay away from this world of crime because it is seen as abnormal. This is not a part of society, they are deviants. Okay, we are the conformist. Criminology. He was very much interested in why people turn into criminals. Very basic question. Why people become criminals? Very basic question. Why people become criminals? And in order to understand this, he had to read psychology. Initially, only initially, he had to read psychology. Not just psychology, he read many things to understand why people become criminals. Okay, criminal psychology, cultural theories, Marxism. Okay, biological theories also he read. Biological theory. Okay, which are different from psychological theory. And then finally he developed a sociological theory on deviance, what we later called as strain theory. Strain theory, or it is also called as a theory of anomie. 3 words I'm using. He developed strain theory. That means he is actually giving importance to strain, explaining why strain happens. ऐसा नहीं कि बस वो strain आया फिर वो equilibrium आ गया खत्म हो गया. Talcott Parson is not giving so much importance to the factors causing strain. To him, it is intermediate path in the process of equilibrium restoration. Okay, but he is giving due importance to the factors causing strain. Okay, and he developed strain theory, which also is known as deviance, typology. This is also one name, or a theory of anomy. Theory of anomy. This word he borrowed from Durkheim, anomy. Okay. Other than criminology, there are many famous contributions. Robert Merton is mainly known as sociologist of science. Okay. He is the founder of sociology of science. If you remember, I told you in science, he talked about ethos of science, norms of science, kudos principle, if you remember. He is actually the first person who to open the discourse of sociology to the natural sciences. Okay. Founder of sociology of science. And he was actually the first person to be awarded National Medal of Science in America. First sociologist to be ever awarded National Medal of Science because he studied the behavior of scientists. Okay, that is something which I'll explain later on. Abhi to nahi. What is typology? Typology means classification. Typology. Just personality types. There are 16 personalities. So that is a typology. Okay. Simple complex society is a typology of society. Okay. Other than this, his famous contribution, he has also studied bureaucratic personality. Bureaucratic personalities at great length. If you remember, when I taught you critique to Weber's Durkheim, okay, Weber's Durkheim, Weber's bureaucracy model. Okay, there I taught you Robert Merton, dysfunctions of bureaucracy. Okay, and Merton is that person who's talking about the personality of bureaucrat. What is the type? When do you say it's a bureaucratic personality? Okay, उसके ऊपर एक अलग स्टडी है उसकी. Always goal oriented. Okay, supposed to be goal oriented, but somehow turns into means oriented. Means become end in itself. Rule bound, rational. Okay, not so emotional. So on those lines, he has studied bureaucratic personalities. Secondly, he has also studied our behavior as to why we follow people, why we follow someone on Instagram. कितना सिंपल क्वेश्चन है, रिलेटेबल है. Why you follow someone on Facebook? Why you subscribe someone's YouTube channel? This is what he studied. And he called it reference group behavior. Reference group behavior. Okay. People follow others. Marxism cannot explain me this, but this is a reality. People follow others. Durkheim cannot explain me this. This is everyday reality. Weber cannot explain me this. Parsons is not able to explain me this. अरे जो everyday reality है उसको कोई explain नहीं कर पा रहा तो किस बात का sociology? This is what Robert Merton is saying. And other than all these things, the most important part is how did Merton develop interest in these things? Let us start with Chicago School. Again, back to Chicago School. Okay, that is based on empiricism and pragmatism. Okay, everyday reality. Chicago School, if you remember, was interested in studying social issues. GS1. It was oriented towards General Studies Paper 1. Okay, social issues, which is not sociology. Sociology is different. Okay. And social issues included crime rate, poverty, racism, all these things. Crime against women, gender inequality, homelessness. These were the basic social issues that people were feeling or were going through. Now, on racism, I talked about, if you remember, Du Bois, who talked about dual consciousness. Okay. On poverty, we had Jane Addams, who was working to fix the issues related to poor people. He had established charity house, social worker, she was known as, social activism she was doing, and later on her contributions developed a field in sociology called as public sociology. This is public sociology. Okay, this is not professional sociology. Professional sociology is something that was happening in Europe. What she was doing is known as public sociology. Not professional sociology. Okay. Of course, he was also working on homelessness. When it comes to crime rate, difference, professional sociology means a sociology that is aimed at coming up with theoretical orientations or developing theories to explain the world. What Marx, Weber, Durkheim was doing. Public sociology is more oriented towards not development of theories, but development of society per se. Difference है. So social work, social activism is not about development of theories. It is about development of society and helping marginalized people. Okay, वही difference है public और professional sociology में. And this categorization of public sociology, professional sociology is done by Michael Boroway, another sociologist, American sociologist. Okay, but वहाँ नहीं जाना हमने. The question is crime rate. Very important question. In those times, crime rate was there definitely only because of homelessness. Obviously, अगर घर नहीं है तो फिर चोरी बनेगी. काम भी तो चलाना है, adaptation भी तो करना है अपना, survival. ठीक है. When Merton read Parsons' adaptation principle, Merton could not figure out how Talcott Parson is explaining me adaptive practice of these people who are criminals. भाई criminals भी तो है society में, ठीक है? Their adaptive practices cannot be explained with the help of Talcott Parson AGIL. मतलब Talcott Parson, if you read AGIL according to A adaptation, एडेप्टेशन मीन्स सर्वाइवल। अच्छा, सर्वाइवल चाहे जैसे भी हो, चाहे चोरी खून करके हो या फिर जॉब करके हो, कोई फर्क है कि नहीं सर्वाइवल में? सर्वाइवल सर्वाइवल ऐसा थोड़ा ना होता है, ये कोई एक्सप्लेन कर दिया थ्योरी, ये कोई बात हुई? रियलिटी देखो कितनी अलग है। वन पर्सन इज committing 100 murders to survive. Second person is doing 2 hour job to survive. कितना डिफरेंस है दोनों के सर्वाइवल में? ये आप बोल दोगे ये अडेप्टेशन, अरे ऐसे थोड़ा ना होता है। दिस इज व्हाट रॉबर्ट मर्टन इज सेइंग। In those times, it was maximum black people who were criminals. Maximum black. Racism could explain crime rate. Okay. There was a link between them. Crime rate was not happening in isolation to any other factor. It was racism. Okay. And most of the criminals were blacks. It was found out that most of the criminals were blacks. But why? Why? Most of the criminals are blacks. No theory could explain. Marxism could not explain. Durkheim functionalism could not explain. Weber could not explain. Talcott Parson could not explain. So Merton was feeling कि मेरे को जो डाउट आ रहे हैं कोई एक्सप्लेन नहीं कर पा रहा, किस बात की सोशियोलॉजी। सही बात है ना? तो इसलिए मर्टन सेड आई विल डेवलप a new branch in sociology which will deal with everyday issues, and of course I will also explain theories, but those theories will be very much helpful in understanding everyday issues. It is not about hawabazi, economic structure, infrastructure, superstructure, religion, ideology, perpetuation, class reproduction और rationalization, formal rationality. इतना वेग वेग ये सब नहीं बोलने वाला मैं, ठीक है? This is what Merton is saying. Now, crime. Here I am going to introduce 3 more scholars before talking about Merton. Okay. Before Merton, 3 people were studying crime, and Merton is very much related to them. Okay. And all those people belong to one school known as Chicago School. Okay. In Chicago School, we had many people. Some of the important ones I have told you: Jane Addams, Du Bois, the founder, Albion Small, Lester Ward, Sumner. Okay. Other than those people, we also had people like W.I. Thomas. Very important man. W.I. Thomas, also Chicago scholar. Okay. W.I. Thomas and Charles Horton Cooley. C.H. Cooley. Okay. ये साइकोलॉजी के स्टूडेंट्स को शायद पता हो, दोनों पता होंगे शायद उनको. एंड लास्ट वन वाज जॉर्ज हर्बर्ट मीड, जो हमारे सिलेबस में है. ओके. तो ये एक चेन है, इस चेन को समझना जरूरी है, तभी हमें आगे का समझ आएगा. Why someone becomes criminal? Very basic question. Thomas, what did he say on this question? Why someone becomes criminal? Thomas said, when you define something as real, it is real in its consequences. इसका क्या मीनिंग हुआ? When you define anything as real, किसी भी चीज को जब आप रियल डिफाइन कर देते हो, वो रियल हो जाता है. When you define something as real, it is real in its consequences. What is the meaning of this? If I tell a student, तुमसे नहीं होगा, छोड़ दो बेटा यूपीएससी, अभी वक्त है बता रहा हूं, ठीक है, वो छोड़ देगा सच में, आज नहीं तो कल, ठीक है, टेंशन में आ जाएगा, पहले तो रोएगा, परेशान होएगा, रोएगा नहीं तो परेशान तो रहेगा, यार ऐसे कैसे बोल दिया मेरे को टीचर ने यार, ठीक है, अगले दिन से पढ़ नहीं पाएगा ढंग से. Next day he would not be able to open the textbook. He would start doubting himself. यार मेरे को सही में समझ नहीं आ रहा, यार वो सही बोल रहे हैं, ऐसा होने लग जाएगा, ठीक है. He will leave the preparation. But if I say someone, तुम्हारा पक्का होएगा, देखना, लिखवा लो मेरे से, अभी लिखवाओ, एक पेपर लेके आना जरा, लिखता हूँ मैं, ठीक है, हो जाएगा उसका, हो जाएगा. When you define something as real, it is real in its consequences. ठीक है, पूरा दिन खुश रहेगा वो, मोटिवेटेड, चार्ज एकदम, दोस्त बुलाएंगे आजा, अरे नहीं मेरा हो रहा है, मैं नहीं आ रहा, ठीक है. तो ये जो चीज है थॉमस की, इसको आप ना साइको सोशो करके नहीं देख सकते, ये एक ह्यूमन बिहेवियर की स्टडी है. ओके. थॉमस बिलीव्ड व्हेन यू स्टार्ट लेबलिंग पीपल एज क्रिमिनल, दे बिकम क्रिमिनल. दो तीन ब्लैक्स को देखा क्राइम करते हुए, अगले दिन से बोलने शुरू कर दिया सारे ब्लैक्स ऐसे ही होते हैं, ठीक है, इनको जॉब नहीं देनी, नो नो इनको जॉब नहीं देनी, ये कल को यहाँ पे चोरी करेंगे हमारे ऑफिस में, ओके, जॉब भी नहीं मिली फिर उनको. वो बोलेगा अरे बट मैं थोड़ा चोरी की थी उधर, जो भी है तुम लोग का मुझे पता है, तुम लोग यही करते हो. तो व्हेन यू डिफाइन समथिंग एज रियल, इट इज रियल इन इट्स कॉन्सिक्वेंस. कल को अगले दिन वही आएगा पत्थर मारने दुकान पे, ऐसे कैसे नहीं दी जॉब मेरे को क्रिमिनल बोल रहे तू, ये लो पत्थर और लो, क्रिमिनल देख रहा हूं मैं तेरे को कहीं से, है क्रिमिनल तेरे को देख रहा हूँ, एक गाड़ी लाना जरा, गाड़ी ला, इसके दरवाजे मार खींच के, इसको क्रिमिनल लग रहा हूं मैं, कौन सा क्राइम किया भाई मैंने, हो गया क्रिमिनल, वो हो गया. ये जो होता है ना, ये चीज, इसको मार्क्स एक्सप्लेन कर सकता है क्या? मार्क्स एक्सप्लेन नहीं कर सकता है. डरखाइन ना, वेबर, हाँ जनरलाइजेशन. When you define something as real, it is real in its consequences. And Merton was very much inspired by this. Merton को बड़ा अच्छा लगा ये. He found it very practical, not very grand theoretical orientation. Okay. तो Merton को लगा मैं इससे दोस्ती करूंगा. Okay. Then came C.H. Cooley, Charles Horton Cooley. Charles Horton Cooley has said very interesting. He says, I am, I, मैं, ठीक है, I am not what I think I am. मैं वो नहीं हूं जो मुझे लगता है मैं हूं. I am not what I think I am. I am not what you think I am. Rather, I am what I think you think I am. समझे? अभी बताता हूं मैं. I am not what I think I am. I am not what you think I am. Rather, बल्कि I am what I think you think I am. पहले तो इसको 3 बार पढ़ो, ठीक है? खुद से पहले 3 बार पढ़ो, फिर मैं एक्सप्लेन करता हूँ। आई एम नॉट व्हाट आई थिंक आई एम, आई एम नॉट व्हाट यू थिंक आई एम, आई एम व्हाट आई थिंक यू थिंक। दोबारा पढ़ते, आई एम नॉट व्हाट आई थिंक आई एम, आई एम नॉट व्हाट यू थिंक आई एम, व्हाट आई थिंक। फिर पढ़ो। हाँ, लुकिंग ग्लास सेल, ठीक है, बताऊंगा मैं, किसी का है ग्लास सेल। हाँ, सोहिनी तुम तो साइकोलॉजी के स्टूडेंट हो, तुम्हें पता ही होगा। देखो, बात सीधी सी है। सपोज, लेट मी गिव यू वेरी प्रैक्टिकल एग्जांपल, सीधी सी बात है। सपोज आई वन डे आई डिसाइड टू मीट माई एक्स गर्लफ्रेंड, एक्स गर्लफ्रेंड होता है, कभी अभी हो जाता है, मतलब मैं इंटेंशनली नहीं मिला, बाय चांस मिल गई, या मैं उसको बाय चांस मिल गया, ठीक है, अपने नए बॉयफ्रेंड और गर्लफ्रेंड के साथ हो गया बाय चांस। अच्छा, नाउ यू व्हेन यू मीट हर, you will not be the way you are with your present girlfriend, or you will not be the way you are with your mother or with your friend or with your future girlfriend. You will be acting in a way that you know what she thinks of you. Okay, so you will not be what you think you are, you will not be what you think she, what you think, what I, you will not be what you think you are, you will not be what she thinks you are, you will be what you think she thinks you are. Your image of what you think of yourself in front of your girlfriend is very different. और सिंपल एग्जांपल देता हूं, सपोज 10 people told me you are very cool, you are very cool, you are very cool, okay, now what will I think? I'll think I'm cool, I'll start thinking next day cool तो मैं हूं, ठीक है। अच्छा, अब क्या है, what I think of myself is not what I really think of myself, what I think of myself is not really what you think of myself. ऐसा नहीं कि तुमने मुझे कूल बोला तो मैं कूल हो गया, रादर नाउ सिंस आई हैव स्टार्टेड बिलीविंग दैट आई एम कूल, so that is very much a result of what I think you actually thought of me. So my coolness is the result of my perception that you think of me as cool person, so I would now act as cool. It is not just about me or him, it is about what I think of him about me. वो चीज आपके अंदर आएगी। I told that person, तुमसे नहीं होएगा, छोड़ दो, ठीक है। Now every day when he will meet his friends, फुल एकदम टेंशन में घूमेगा, अपने टुट्टा फूक रहा होगा, अपना चाय वाय पी रहा होगा दोस्तों के साथ, ठीक है, पॉलिटी आई आर डिस्कस कर रहा होगा, रशिया चाइना, ठीक है। जैसे ही मैं उसको दिख जाऊंगा, सर बदलाव ही बदल गया, पूरा इमेज ही एकदम। बोलूंगा क्या हो गया, ठंडे पड़ गए तुम्हें, अभी तो चाय वाय पी रहे थे, कोल्ड ड्रिंक, यूएस रशिया कहाँ चले गए? नहीं नहीं सर, वो तो ऐसे ही, गए नहीं अभी तक तुम घर? ऐसे मैं अगर ऐसे करने लग जाऊं उसके साथ, ऑलमोस्ट रैगिंग ही हो जाए, ऑलमोस्ट रैगिंग, बेइज्जत करना जिसे कहते हैं मार्केट में, ठीक है, वही हो जाए। उसकी इमेज जो वो सोचता है अपने बारे में, पहले तो ही विल स्टार्ट हेटिंग मी फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, ओके, सेकेंडली his confidence will go down to a very drastic level, and whenever he will confront me, what he will think of himself, he will think of himself as a loser, because this is what I have labeled him as. So when he comes before me, his image that he has before his friends would not be the same, okay, So therefore, he is not what he thinks he is. He is not what I think he is. He is what he thinks I think of him. Understood? Yes. Okay. Just a second. Okay. So Robert Merton really liked it. उसने बोला मैं तुमसे भी दोस्ती करूंगा. Okay, because both of you are talking very practical thing, and this happens. Okay. And this is known as looking glass self theory. Looking glass self. Looking glass self. What is the meaning of मैं जो सोचता हूं तुम मेरे बारे में क्या सोचते हो वही मैं हूं. हाँ बिल्कुल बिल्कुल वही. Looking glass self. By looking glass self, it was labeled as simple सी बात है. You just had an interaction with a girl that you thought you will propose. Imagine karo. You just thought about proposing a girl. Okay. You will come back home and you will start enacting the same thing in front of mirror. कैसा लग रहा था यार मैं उसको? नहीं. ज़्यादा बेवकूफ तो नहीं दिख गया उसको? Okay. You will call your friend. यार मैंने ऐसे ऐसे किया. ठीक है? When you are looking at yourself in front of mirror, you are thinking of yourself as idiot because you think she must have thought of you as idiot. तो इसलिए तुम्हारा कॉन्फिडेंस खत्म हो गया शीशे के सामने आते ही. लुकिंग ग्लास सेल्फ. So what you are thinking about yourself at that point of time is the result of what you think he must have thought about you. तो तुम्हारा कॉन्फिडेंस जा रहा है. ये हम करते हैं एवरीडे लाइफ में करते हैं हम ये. हमेशा सोचते हैं कि सामने वाला क्या सोच रहा होगा यार, उस हिसाब से बात करते हैं. ठीक है. मार्क्स बता सकता है ये सब चीजें. तो लुकिंग ग्लास सेल्फ बड़ा अच्छा लगा इसको मर्टन को. And he will use all these things to explain crime. Okay. Basically reviewing all those things, not literally using, but reviewing these things. He's in the process of review. Mead is someone I will tell you later on. But remember, Mead is very much influenced by Cooley. Charles Horton Cooley. Okay. Now, a 5-minute break, then we continue to see what happened after this. Okay. So am I audible? Now, Merton was reviewing all these people one by one. He found them interesting and quite pragmatic, practical, based on empirical findings. Okay, that was the self-perception of blacks. Blacks had started believing that this is what white thinks of us, and their self-perception had become like a criminal. and they acted like criminals only. Okay. To speak in loud voice in a highly masculine fashion was regarded as criminal. They are not so sophisticated when they speak. Okay. पता नहीं क्या चेन लेके घूमते हैं, टी शर्ट भी लूज लूज ही पहनते हैं. This is not the kind of citizens America should have. And they actually started believing that yes, we are like that. Basically, hip hop music. Okay, we have sociology of music also in universities. Hip hop has origin in the discrimination itself. Hip hop was basically a music of protest against whites. Okay, and now it is in fashion, it is in fad. Okay, अब पंजाबी hip hop आ गया, so that hip hop, the origin of hip hop has lost its meaning. Okay, anyhow. When W.I. Thomas gave this theory, when you define something as real, it is real in its consequence. This actually inspired Merton a lot. And Merton came up with a thesis known as self-fulfilling prophecy. This is coined by Merton, this term. Self-fulfilling prophecy, inspired by Thomas, coined by Merton. Okay. What is self-fulfilling prophecy? Same thing, but now applicable to large-scale social phenomena as well. Okay. Suppose you get a message from ICICI Bank. आपका पैसा डूबने वाला है. Okay. Or suppose you get a message from your friend, ICICI Bank is going to collapse. निकाल लो अपना पैसा. Okay. Take away all your money that you have deposited in ICICI account because ICICI Bank is going to collapse. You spread the same message viral to all other friends, WhatsApp, Instagram, hashtag, हर जगह डाल दिया. Now everybody went to ICICI, लंबी लाइन लग गई. अब सबने पैसा निकालना शुरू कर दिया. अब डूब गया ICICI. Now ICICI have collapsed. When you define something as real, it is real in its consequences. क्या बात है मर्टन की? He is applying the same things to the real world, and that is happening. Yes Bank, which collapsed last year, was also the collapse. The reason for collapse was also self-fulfilling prophecy. It is not purely economic. An economist cannot look at these reasons. This is how sociology becomes different from economics as well. Economics would not be having models to capture this reality because they are very much interested in maths, computing, scales. ये सब चीजें स्केल में थोड़ा ना आएंगी. कोई मॉडल थोड़ा निकल जाएगा इक्वेशन इन चीजों की. But this is the reality. And Merton applied this to everything, to education. When I gave you this example, it was given by Merton. Inequalities in education can be explained by self-fulfilling prophecy. Inequalities in education, क्या बात है? Why people drop out from school can be explained by self-fulfilling prophecy. स्कूल छोड़ दिया. टीचर रोज यही बोलता था, पेरेंट्स को बुलाओ, तुम्हें फेल कर दूंगी. ठीक है? If you do not complete your assignment tomorrow, if you come without assignment, I'll call पुलिस. ठीक है? पुलिस को बुलाऊंगी, जेल भेज दूंगी तुम. ठीक है? अरे वो आएगा ही नहीं, कल से. फिर ड्रॉप आउट इसको बोलते हैं. ओके, people call it dropout, but what is the main reason behind dropouts? Economists study कर सकते हैं इसको. Economists will say like this: 100 people took admission in class, 10 people dropped out. Dropout ratio is 10%. अरे बेवकूफ आदमी, इकोनॉमिस्ट नाम के, मुझे ये तो बताओ ड्रॉप आउट हो क्यों रहे? अच्छा, ड्रॉप आउट्स व्हाई हैपनिंग? Because of distance between home and school. So long distance, people are not able to travel this much of distance. There is no road connectivity, there is no infrastructure. अरे सारे फालतू रीजन है जो वो उस दिन जो हुआ, उस दिन जिसकी वजह से वो नहीं आया, वो नहीं बताया इकोनॉमिस्ट ने. Economists are giving generalizations, not giving the real pragmatic empirical reason behind dropout. Okay. This is what self-fulfilling prophecy is all about. Okay. Now, the question is, crime. Is crime also a result of self-fulfilling prophecy? To some extent, it may be. Okay, but the problem is, how can we explain the crimes committed by whites with this theory? Blacks का तो आप कर लोगे, but you cannot be explaining crime by white people with this theory. Self-fulfilling or self-perception looking glass self was applicable to black. What about whites? Whites are also committing crime, and that is why Merton rejected that theory. And Merton came up with his own theory. But before that, also let me go through some other theories which he talked about. These theories that you have just got introduced to fall under psychological theory of deviance. These are psychological theory of deviance. Okay, largely. Whether you call it socio-psychological, purely psychological, or purely sociological, that's one and the same thing. Okay. Here यहाँ पे अब यहाँ पे जो distinctions हैं वो इतनी clear cut नहीं रहती. Okay. Because what is happening inside mind is actually having repercussions in the outside world. So you cannot say that this is psychology, this is sociology. Connected होता है ये सब. Now, Merton also went through biological theory of deviance. Biological. This was psychological theory. Now, biological theory of deviance. What is biological theory of deviance? There is one scholar, Lombroso. He has written one book, Born Criminals. Pedaishi Criminals. This is the name of the book. Born Criminals. What is he describing in this book? He says, if you look into criminals, all the criminals have some unique physiological features. You will see long nose, okay, broad forehead, elongated ears, okay. You will see some features like this of criminals. Okay, they will look like black. They will have long forehead, okay, elongated ear. Their oral feature would not be as homogeneous as that of whites. Okay, and these things are very unique traits found in criminals. Whenever you see people like these, देखते ही बोलते हो ये तो आदमी चोर लगता है मेरे को देखने में शक्ल से ही. ये हम करते हैं कि नहीं? करते हैं ये हम. चोर लगता है देखने में ही. बकवास करके गया अभी बोल रहे 1 करोड़ रुपए आ गए मेरे पास. पक्का चोरी के होंगे, जुआ खेलता होगा 10 रुपए की लाइट लगा के ऊपर पत्तों के साथ, दोस्तों के साथ। ऐसा हम बात करते हैं रियल लाइफ में, ठीक है। ये है लोम्ब्रोसो। सो मर्टन फाउंड दिस थ्योरी वेरी रेसिस्ट, कि तुम सीधा सीधा बोल दो ब्लैक्स ही है क्रिमिनल, और क्या कहने की कोई, बोल दो, क्योंकि ये सारे फीचर्स जो जनरली if you look into purely if you look into physiology, so obviously there is no fact, there is no doubt that yes, physiology of blacks is different from whites, but that does not define why they become criminal. ये तो सिर्फ फिजियोलॉजिकल फीचर्स हैं, इससे बोल दोगे आपके वो क्रिमिनल है, ये तो कोई एक्सप्लेनेशन नहीं हुई। तो मर्टन को गुस्सा आया, उसने बोला तुम मेरे दोस्त नहीं हो, ठीक है, इनको हटा दिया उसने। Next, what he read was Marxist theory of deviance. Marxist theory of deviance. Deviance means crime here, okay. Marxist theory of deviance. Now see, what did Merton find in Marxist theory of deviance? In the sense, how Karl Marx discussed crime. Karl Marx has also discussed crime, okay. And Merton found a flaw in it. I'll discuss that. But what is that Marxist theory of deviance? Marxist theory of deviance say capitalism as a system is criminogenic. This is one word. Pen. Capitalism is criminogenic. What is the meaning of this? That means the inherent values of capitalism are those values that reproduces criminal behavior and makes it normal. What is the values of capitalism? Appropriate wealth, surplus value appropriation. Okay. These are the values of capitalism. Appropriation of surplus value or appropriation of wealth, or to make profit. Whosoever has made profit is given fame in society. Forbes come up with top 10 list, billionaires. These are the people who are given fame and status in society. That way, capitalism as a system inherently has those values that whoever gets money is popular and is regarded as, wise man. You must have realized that जब अमीर लोग होते हैं, the people who are billionaire, they always write books. Have you noticed this thing? जैसे आप करोड़पति बन जाते हो, आप किताब लिखते हो एक, How to make wealth. ठीक है, ये होता है, and people buy it. ये how to make wealth बोल के और wealth बना लिया उसने, फिर खेल गया वो, ठीक है. People purchased it. How to make wealth. Wealth उनकी तो बनी नहीं, जो पढ़ रहे थे उसकी बन गई, जिसने बेच दी, ठीक है. फिर वो अगले दिन आ जाएगा पब्लिक स्पीच में, उसको रिवॉर्ड मिलेंगे, अवार्ड मिलेंगे, टेडेक्स की टॉक मिलेगी. प्लीज डिस्कस हाउ डिड यू मेक वेल्थ, ठीक है, वो बताएगा. डेडिकेशन, परसेवरेंस, एफिशिएंसी, हार्ड वर्क with little bit of luck and God's grace. ये है way to wealth. बात सीधी सी है, देखो ऐसा है, कैपिटलिज्म एज अ सिस्टम rewards those people who generate wealth, and also, according to Marxist theory of deviance, the people who are actually the producer of surplus value, the people who are producer of surplus value, they stay poor. The people who produce surplus value, they are poor. The people who appropriate, उठाते हैं जो फ्री का, उनका, they are rich. That means capitalism is a system which rewards theft, चोरी. कैपिटलिज्म एक ऐसा सिस्टम है जो चोरी को रिवॉर्ड देता है. You see any coaching run by owner, okay, it is the owner who is making wealth, appropriating surplus value of teachers, okay, and that is seen as normal part. Today we see it is very normal. Okay, so how did this become normal? How did this become normal? Media, education, school system, all these things helped in making these things normal. कि कल को तुम जॉब ज्वाइन करो तो रोना मत, यही होता है. आपकी सैलरी कट क्यों हुई, आपकी सैलरी बढ़ी क्यों नहीं? बिकॉज आपने ये नहीं किया, बिकॉज आपने वो नहीं किया. स्ट्रक्चर पे कभी ध्यान जाएगा ही नहीं. स्कूल यही सिखाता है, सिस्टम मेरिट पे है, ठीक है. This is what Marxist theory of deviance is. Now Merton believes that to some extent it is valid. To some extent it is valid. But what I can see is that here in America, it is not the bourgeois who are falling into the trap of crime. In the sense, of course, if I look into the bourgeois activity through Marxist theory of deviance, I will look at them as criminals. But these are not the people who are going to jail. Jail जो जा रहे हैं वो तो दूसरे हैं. Working class. So again, why working class people are committing crime is not answered through Marxist theory of deviance. Did you find answer to this question, why working class commit crime? No. Marxist theory of deviance only tells me that criminogenic system is inherent to capitalism, and it is the bourgeoisie who are criminals. But again, very far-fetched from the empirical reality, because I do not see bourgeoisie being sent to jail. It is the working class. तो मर्टन जो है वो बोलता है, तुमसे मैं बाद में बात करता हूँ, ठीक है? दोस्त बनाना है नहीं, ये देखता हूँ मैं. पहले अब मैं बोलूंगा, तुम लोगों ने बहुत बकवास कर ली. Now Merton came up with his own theory of deviance, which is known as Merton's deviance typology. Okay, Merton's deviance typology. And after this topic, I will explain you Merton's critique to Parsons as well, because that is also one feature of Merton's theory. Okay. The real reason for Merton was to understand why crime rate was rising like anything in 1960s. At that point of time, crime rate was at its peak, and no theory was able to give Merton the real answer. Those initial theories labeled blacks, talked about blacks. He found whites as criminals. Marx' theory talks about bourgeois crime. He found working class as criminals. No theory was giving him answer. So he had to come up with his own theory. और क्या करता फिर वो? Durkheim, when he is reading, he is only getting to know that anomie is a temporary phase. Okay, during anomie, crime rate rises. So he got to know, okay, चलो ठीक है, anomie होगा, तो क्या? Still, I'm not able to answer why crime rate is happening. Bhai, anomie leading to crime rate is not an explanation. Okay. Now, Merton says the real reason for crime rate to happen in society is not psychology of individual, not physiology of individual, not capitalism as a system, but what is being told by society and what the other person is able to follow. Let me explain it. In society, there are two things. One is culturally defined goals. Second is socially acceptable means. You will see elements of Talcott Parson here, goals and means. Okay. Talcott Parson was not able to explain crime through his structure of social action. Okay. Goals है, means है. एक बात बताओ, if you look into societal goals, जब हम पैदा होते हैं, okay, the moment we take birth, after some socialization, we get to learn that we have to become something first of all. Engineer बन जाओ, doctor, lawyer, IAS, कुछ भी, but you have to become. This is the first stage that we have to cross. Okay, that you have to earn something. Okay, ये आपको करना पड़ेगा. देखो पैदा हो गए हो, आपको पहले बनना पड़ेगा कुछ, फिर कुछ कमाना भी पड़ेगा. तो पैदा हुए तो ये करना पड़ेगा. ठीक है. So this is the society telling us, become something, earn something. Okay, and then make your family as well. ये भी करना पड़ेगा आपको. ठीक है. और अपने बच्चों को सेम चीज करवानी पड़ेगी. ये जो स्टेजेस हैं ये हम पार करते हैं. Okay, we cross these stages in society. So therefore, the culturally defined goal of society is what? The culturally defined goal of society is earn money, and gain status, and live your life king size. बंगलो मिल जाएगा गाड़ी के साथ. हार्ड वर्क करो, earn money, gain status. Okay, this is the goal. Everybody is going through this goal in the world. Okay, earn money, gain status. Now, how to earn money and gain status? What are the means? And not just means, what are the socially acceptable means? You can earn money and status by murder as well. आप जब खून करते हो, खून करते ही आप अलमारियां खोलते हो, कबोर्ड खोलते हो, सब कुछ उठा के अपने बैग में डालते हो, दोस्त के पास लेके जाते हो, वो बोलते हैं अरे पियो मेरे लाल, खोल बोतल एक, स्टेटस मिल गया उसको. अरे विद इन दैट ग्रुप तो एटलीस्ट ही हैज अर्न्ड स्टेटस ना, इन दैट कम्युनिटी, इन द क्रिमिनल कम्युनिटी. उसके लिए स्टेटस वही उसको चाहिए. उसको प्राइम मिनिस्टर से थोड़ा ना अवार्ड चाहिए, फेलोशिप कुछ. उसका स्टेटस वही है क्रिमिनल गैंग में. उसको लीडर बनना है क्रिमिनल गैंग का, उसका गोल वो है. हायरार्की उसको पार करनी है. ठीक है. Culturally defined goal, earn money, gain status. Socially acceptable means. What is the socially acceptable means? Acceptable, socially acceptable. Of course, that is education. पढ़ोगे लिखोगे तभी बनोगे. Hard work. These are the socially acceptable means. Murder is not socially acceptable. This is socially acceptable. Education and hard work. अच्छा, the question is criminal कैसे आए फिर? The fact is, when you have education and when you can do hard work, you can earn money and gain status, become popular. But if you do not have education or you do not do hard work, तो फिर कैसे मिलेगा? फिर तो ऐसे ही मिलेगा, चोरी कर करके. So therefore, when you have disjunction, this is a word Merton uses. Merton says, when there is disjunction between means and goals, disjunction, that means mismatch. When there is mismatch between means and goals, it develops strain. इसको ध्यान रखना है. It develops strain. Strain. ठीक है. Strain किसको डेवलप होता है? इंडिविजुअल्स को डेवलप होना शुरू होता है strain. Okay, suppose your parents belong to below poverty line family, BPL family. Okay, and you want to become a businessman. Okay, education your parents cannot afford for you. Okay, so you are not able to give your efforts. अब इसमें तुम्हारी गलती है. Is this your fault that your parents cannot afford? And by the way, is this the fault of parent that they cannot afford? नहीं, उनका भी fault नहीं. उनका भी fault नहीं है. This is not personal trouble, it is public issue. Remember this. ऐसे बहुत पेरेंट्स हैं और ऐसे बहुत बच्चे हैं. और इतने सारे ऐसे पेरेंट्स कहां से आए इस सोसाइटी में, पूरे दुनिया के अंदर? इतने सारे ऐसे बच्चे कहां से आए इस सोसाइटी में और पूरी दुनिया में? मार्क्स के पास इसका आंसर है, बट वो कितना वैलिड है कितना नहीं उस पर अभी हम नहीं जाते. बट मर्टन क्या बोलते हैं पहले उस पर देखते हैं. मर्टन सेज देयर इज अ मिसमैच, लॉट ऑफ मिसमैच. एंड ये जो चीज है, earn money, gain status, have your own car, this is also one goal in society. Have your own house, car, property, wealth, fame, status. These are the culturally defined goals of society. But Merton calls these goals as American dream. इसको American dream बोलते हैं. Okay. He labeled the culturally defined goal as American dream. Why he called it American dream? Because the very concept of having your own car, bungalow, status, fame, money, wealth has actually come from America. These things have actually come from America. ये हमारे नहीं है, ये अमेरिका से आए हैं. Imagine just to give you one example, 100 years back, would you have thought of, or 200 years back, would you have thought of, having your own car, bungalow, something like this? ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. ये जो aspirations, the rising aspiration every day that we have is because of globalization, which is largely Americanization. We are following American trend. And in America, it was the result of Hollywood. It is actually, the world is largely, what we have before us is because of Hollywood. This is what Merton is saying. Okay, इतनी प्रैक्टिकल बात कर रहा है वो, बहुत प्रैक्टिकल बात करने जा रहा है वो. अभी जो बताएगा जो Hollywood has produced American dream day and night, day and night, day and night. Nothing else. In those times, the kind of movies that were produced in Hollywood were all based on the success of individuals. somehow who made his way through all these struggles and earned billions. At the end of the day, he made his own house, own car, everything settled, and movie ends. Popcorn खाओ, घर जाओ. ये थी उस टाइम की हॉलीवुड मूवीज, based on personality. Some specific personalities which were labeled as heroes. Heroes are those who make money. Villains are those who steal money. And villains were portrayed as black people in those movies. Heroes were white. ये जो पूरा सिस्टम तैयार हुआ, ये हॉलीवुड में तैयार हुआ. ठीक है. मर्टन बोलता है that people who could not pursue this American dream of earning money, having car, bungalow, gain status through legitimate means or socially acceptable means, they actually resorted to crime. To those people, they had internalized these values that this is what we have to do in our life. We have to earn money. We have to, क्योंकि हॉलीवुड की मूवीज हमने सारी देख ली हैं. अब हमें क्या करना है? खत्म होगी 10 मूवी हमने एक साथ देखी, बिंज वॉचिंग की है. अब हमने क्या करना है? हमने पैसा चाहिए, गाड़ी चाहिए, सेम वही गाड़ी चाहिए जो मैंने अभी देखी मूवी में, सेम ऐसा ही बंगला होना चाहिए. ठीक है. और सेम ऐसी पाइप चाहिए मेरे को, सिगार, और वो टोपी चाहिए मेरे को. ठीक है. ढूंढो, पता करो कहाँ हैं वो लोग जिनके पास ये सब है. एक आया, उधर है, उधर पीछे उस रोड के. चलो सब. ठीक है. सब गए, लूट लिया उसको, मार दिया, सिगार उसकी ले ली, आखिर में फोटो सेल्फी खिंचवा ली, फेसबुक में अपलोड कर दिया उसने. आई एम बिलियनियर. ओवरनाइट बिलियनियर. सोशल क्लाइंबर्स एक रात में बन गए. ठीक है. कौन बनेगा करोड़पति was based on this who wants to be billionaire only. पूरा उसका कॉपी. इंडियन आइडल पूरा अमेरिकन आइडल का कॉपी है. इंडिया में ऐसी कोई चीज है जो अमेरिका से कॉपी ना की हो? बॉलीवुड हॉलीवुड से आया है. हम जो करते हैं वो भी सब वहां से आया है, अमेरिका से. हमें जो चाहिए वो सब अमेरिका से आया है. ठीक है. बड़ा प्रैक्टिकल आदमी है ये. ठीक है. तो राइट डाउन वन लाइन. Morton believed that if we want to understand deviance, we will have to understand the structural conditions of society. If we want to understand deviance, we will have to understand structural conditions within society. Next, what did he mean by structural conditions? Question. What did he mean by structural condition? Merton meant the generalized values. याद है वो term? Parsons. Merton meant generalized values that have been internalized by the actors. Generalized values that have been internalized by the actors. Okay. And all of us have internalized this thing that yes, this is what success is. Okay. And these were the generalized values in America at that point in time because of Hollywood. Okay. I'm not saying purely because of Hollywood, because Hollywood को भी तो आने के लिए कुछ एक reference ही होगा. But Hollywood actually made this notion popular. At that point, until Hollywood, it was very limited to some people. But after Hollywood, this notion became popular, mass के level पे चली गई. Okay. Now, Merton ने एक चीज देखी. There is one man, Al Capone. Al Capone. Okay. Al Capone. There was this man in America. He was like Daud Ibrahim of India. Okay. And Merton saw ये आदमी के पास पैसा बहुत है. Okay. Lot of wealth, car, bungalow, बहुत कुछ. Without hard work, education, without all these things, he has everything. And he is also labeled as most wanted by NYPD, New York Police Department. Okay. Most wanted की list में भी है ये. Okay. Merton said, how come these people become so much wealthy with illegitimate means? In fact, more money than the people who are pursuing money with legitimate means. उनसे भी ज्यादा पैसा इनके पास है. ऐसा कैसे होता है सोसाइटी में? Okay. And Merton called these kind of people as innovators. Innovators हैं ये. क्या बात? ये भी इनोवेशन है भाई. बिना मेहनत के, बिना पढ़ाई के ऐसा ही पैसा, इनोवेशन. एंड ऐसा ये सबकी बस की बात है क्या? इसको तुम डू नॉट लुक एट दिस थिंग एज विद योर वैल्यू जजमेंट्स कि वो खराब है, बुरे लोग होते, ऐसे नहीं. विदाउट वैल्यूज जस्ट लुक एट दीज पीपल. इट इज एन आर्ट. विदाउट एजुकेशन, विदाउट हार्ड वर्क यू मेक लॉट ऑफ मनी. आई एम नॉट सेइंग कोई हार्ड वर्क नहीं, बट ऑफ कोर्स इतना स्ट्रगल तो नहीं जितना स्ट्रगल एक नॉर्मल आदमी को करना पड़ता है with socially legitimate means. Okay. This is innovation. Okay. Now, irrespective of all these details, let me now come to the main idea. When there is mismatch between culturally defined goals and legitimate means, individual develops strain. सर में दर्द होता है. इतना पढ़ा लिखा, इतना पढ़ाई की, इतना पढ़ाई की, ठीक है, तो भी झाड़ू मार रहे हैं, ठीक है, तो भी रेलवे में क्लर्क के जॉब पे लगे हैं, बैंक के क्लर्क के पोजीशन में लगे हैं बीटेक करने के बाद, ठीक है, इतना पढ़ने के बाद ये कर रहे हैं. स्ट्रेन आता है, रोज रोज आता है. क्या कर रहे हैं? यूपीएससी दे सकते हैं एक बार दो बार, ठीक है, यूपीएससी ट्राई करते हैं या फिर कुछ और ट्राई करते हैं, बाहर जाते हैं, समथिंग लाइक दिस. एवरी डे इंडिविजुअल डील विद द स्ट्रेन because with the legitimate means he could not fulfill his goals, ambitions, which were popularized by Hollywood. Ab Merton says individual adapt with strain. Very important line. Individuals adapt with strain or adapt to the strain in unique fashions. In unique fashion. First, here you will write adaptation, which he has borrowed from Talcott Parsons. Here you will write culturally defined goals. Here you will write socially legitimate means. How individuals adapt to the strain. Now see, Merton says there are 5 types of people. That is why it is called as typology. 5 types of people. जैसे साइकोलॉजी वाले करते हैं 16 personality types. Okay, इसने भी कर दिया 5 types of groups. Okay, not just personality groups. In fact, he says first are conformist. इनके पास सब कुछ है. They want to earn money, they want to have bungalow, they want to have car, and they have good education as well and good family as well to get all those things. So plus. Simple. These are one set of people in society. Then we have second set of people in society. They are known as innovators. So how did the first one adapt to the strain? By conforming to the values and legitimate means. He conformed to the values. Yes, he internalized those values and followed the means, education, hard work. How the other person adapted? By innovating. He adapted to the strain. Now, what is the meaning of innovation here? Culturally defined goal. Do they follow? Yes or not? Yes, they follow. They want to have bungalow, they want to have car, नौकर चाकर, ठीक है. But do they follow legitimate means? No. So instead of cross, you can also write minus. Okay. Minus. ठीक है. Next. Next is ritualist. Third category, ritualist. Ritualists are those people who are not so concerned about पैसा, शोहरत, इज्जत, बड़ा गाड़ी, बड़ा बंगलो. अपना मेहनत करो, मिलना होगा, मिल जाएगा यार. Why to run after these things? अपना पैशन से अपना काम करो. ठीक है. पूरा टाइम पे आओ, सुबह 8 बजे, शाम को निकल जाओ 5 बजे. अच्छा काम करोगे, मिलेगा. भागो मत इन चीजों के पीछे. डेडिकेशन फुल दिखाओ अपना. ठीक है. ये वो लोग हैं. इनको चाहिए तो सब कुछ, बकवास ज्यादा करते हैं ये, बोलेंगे नहीं. पर एनीवे, मर्टन सेज they are not so much after these things, but they follow everything legitimately. अपना education, dedication, perseverance, discipline, all the socially legitimate means they will follow. ठीक है. अच्छा, next, retreatist. Retreatist. This is fourth category. Retreatists are those people who are neither interested in making money nor in education or nor in hard work. कुछ नहीं चाहिए. Who are these people? ये वो हैं जो हर रोज, after every week they would go to Manali, गोवा. घूम ही जा रहे हैं, लाइफ में कोई गोल नहीं. फिर फेसबुक पे डाल देते हैं फोटोज, यहाँ घूम लिया, वहां घूम लिया, भारत दर्शन पूरा हो गया, बाहर चलेंगे, वहां पे भी यही हरकतें करेंगे. ठीक है. अरे पैसा कहाँ से आ रहा है कुछ पता ही नहीं है. चलो जो भी है, चोरी वोरी कर रहे हैं जिसका भी, ठीक है. बट दे डू नॉट हैव एनी गोल इन लाइफ. I am not saying they do not have any goal. Yes, they have goal. They do not have goal. They are not conforming to that goal to have their own car, bungalow, गाड़ी, or status, money, wealth. जितना सेविंग वेविंग है इकट्ठा करके गोवा चले गए. ठीक है. उड़ा दिया गोवा में सारा. ठीक है. Hippies. If you know what are hippies are like those people only. You would find them all the time on the beach. Okay. Ascetic people. Ascetic. हिमालय चल जाएंगे, फूकेंगे वहां पे बैठ के, जिंदगी अपनी निकाल देंगे वहीं पर. ठीक है. बाबा बन जाएंगे. ये सब में कुछ नहीं रखा, मोह माया है सब. ठीक है. कल को यहीं आओगे तो देखना, हिमालय में एक बाइक लेके आओगे, गाड़ी वाड़ी की कोई जरूरत नहीं तुम्हें पड़ेगी, देखना. ये ascetic लोग हैं, retreatist. Now, the last category is very interesting one. Rebellion. इनका थोड़ा यूनिक कॉम्बिनेशन है. What are rebellions? Rebellions are Plus minus, plus minus. What is the meaning of this? It simply means they reject culturally defined goals. Socially legitimate means minus minus. But they have their own culturally defined goals and their own legitimate means which they want to make normal to the level of society. Basically, what society considers as culturally defined goal, they want to replace it with a new set of goal which should be labeled as culturally defined. They want to replace the legitimate means with a new set of means which they want to be seen as legitimate to the society the way the earlier means or goals were seen as legitimate. Rebellion. And rebellion, the very idea of rebellion is very much inspired from Weber's charismatic authority. Okay. Charismatic authority are always those which possess extraordinary quality. They want to bring change to the society. They would not want the society to be in the similar condition that it was. They would want to progress. They would want to evolve. They would want to help society evolve to the next stage. Okay. Those are rebellions. Gandhi was a rebellion. Okay. Hitler, rebellion. Both Gandhi and Hitler are different, but still both of them are rebellion in this typology. Because both of them thought about new vision, new kind of society that they were thinking of. Marx was a rebellion. Marx was thinking of having a new set of society where culturally defined goal will be to live in community without any greed, to share whatever you have earned with the people who are in need. And the means would be revolution. Means are not the same. Socially legitimate means नहीं है ये, एकदम revolutionary changes, rebellion. Marx, Gandhi, Ambedkar. These are rebellions. Rebellions का मतलब खराब नहीं होता है. Rebellion के बिना change आएगा ही नहीं society में. Okay. When you start thinking of them as rebel, that actually shows your position, that you are actually in support of the position. That is why you are thinking of it as rebel. But someone's rebel may be someone else's freedom fighter or a leader of social movement. Okay, to the people who supported Gandhi, to him, he was not a rebel. To Britishers, he might have been. Okay. So, what is rebellion? Socially constructed phenomena. Okay. So, this is what Merton has studied. This is what deviance typology is all about. Okay. Now, the question is, why people are turning criminals? Why crime rate is rising? This was the main question that Merton had. इसका आंसर मैं आपको कल दूंगा जब टाइम हो गया. Okay. Now, if you have any question, you can ask me. Innovation example why? मतलब इनोवेशन एग्जांपल वाई का मतलब ठीक है. एल कपून इज लाइक दाऊद इब्राहिम, गैम्बलर. कसिनो जो है ना अमेरिका में, सी द होल कल्चर ऑफ कसिनो इज कमिंग फ्रॉम अमेरिका. ये मालूम है ना तुमको? कसिनो का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है कहां से आया? अमेरिका से आया. तो जिसको हम पत्ता खेलना कहते हैं, पत्ते, जो पत्ते हम खेलते हैं, ये कहां से आ रहा है? ये अमेरिका से आया है. बस ये कि हम गरीब हैं तो हम कैश वाला पत्ता नहीं खेलते, हम एंटरटेनमेंट के लिए खेलते हैं. वहां पे एंटरटेनमेंट के साथ पैसा भी बनता है कसिनो में. एल कपून जो बहुत बड़ा गैम्बलर था अमेरिका का, नाम चलता था उसका सिक्का था, अल कपूर के नाम की करेंसी आती थी, करेंसी 100 के नोट में उसके फोटो होते थे। ठीक है, अब ये मान मत जाओ, ये तो एग्जैजरेट करूंगा ही मैं थोड़ा बहुत। बेसिकली बहुत बड़ा आदमी था, बहुत बड़ा क्रिमिनल अमेरिका का, सब कुछ था उसके पास, शोहरत, स्टेटस, पावर, वेल्थ, एजुकेशन नहीं, क्या गाड़ी, नौकर चाकर, दुनिया भर का सब ऐशो आराम, अशरफिया, ठीक है, सब थे उसके पास, विदाउट एजुकेशन और विदाउट लेजिटिमेट मीन्स। इनको तो स्टडी करना इंपॉर्टेंट है, ये भी तो लोग हैं सोसाइटी के, सोसाइटी से ही प्रोड्यूस होते हैं। सेल्फ फुलफिलिंग प्रोफेसी, वीडियो स्टक हो गया, वीडियो देख लेना दोबारा, उसको एक्सप्लेन दोबारा करूंगा मैं तो टाइम जाएगा ना। अभी तो डाउट जो है, जो समझ नहीं आया वो बताओ, जो दोबारा देख सकते हो उसमें क्या डाउट है? समझ रहे हो ना तुम मेरी बात? भाई जो चीज तुम दोबारा देख सकते हो उसमें डाउट ही नहीं है, जो समझ नहीं आया देखकर वो पूछो। सर प्लीज एक्सप्लेन रिलेशन बिटवीन कैरिज्मेटिक एंड रिबेलियन। रिबेलियन मतलब क्या होता है? रिबेलियन मतलब समवन हु इज हैविंग अ न्यू विजन। रिबेलियन पहले तो दिमाग से हटा दो, रिबेलियन खराब लोग होते हैं। पहले दिमाग से वो हटाना पड़ेगा, नहीं तो नहीं समझ आएगा। ये टर्म सिर्फ यूज किए उसने, ठीक है, वो नहीं बोल रहा ये रिबेलियन है, वो बोल रहा है इसको, इनको रिबेलियन कहा जाता है। वो नहीं कह रहा रिबेलियन ये लोग हैं, वो बता रहा है इनको रिबेलियन कहा जाता है। ओके, गांधी, मार्क्स, अंबेडकर, हिटलर, मसूलिनी, जॉर्ज वॉशिंगटन, नेल्सन मंडेला, भगत सिंह, सुभाष चंद्र बोस, सरदार पटेल, नेहरू, these are rebellions and charismatic personality as well. And charismatic personality का concept, where did Weber draw this concept from? Charismatic, there is something that I did not tell you, but there is an interpretation among social scientists that Weber was inspired by Durkheim. These are sacred personalities. Okay, personalities which are extraordinarily charged, not ordinary, and mundane, not mundane at all, completely separate from the mundane ordinary life. These are the people who possess sacred feature. This is sacred embodied in the personality being charismatic authority, which Merton calls as rebellion. सब कनेक्टेड है एक दूसरे से। Why are innovators SLM? Way to keep bureaucrats for, ये सब मैं कल बताऊंगा, कल मुकेश। ब्यूरोक्रेट्स क्यों, देखो मुकेश, जब तुम बोलते हो कि ब्यूरोक्रेट्स को कहां रखे, पहले तो हमें ये समझना पड़ेगा ब्यूरोक्रेट एक होमोजीनियस ग्रुप नहीं है, समझ रहे हो ना? ब्यूरोक्रेट इज नॉट अ होमोजीनियस ग्रुप। ब्यूरोक्रेसी में देयर इज ग्रुप ए, ग्रुप बी, ग्रुप सी, ग्रुप डी। वो भी जो चपड़ासी है वो भी तो ब्यूरोक्रेट है। ये समझ नहीं रहे तो मेरी बात को। चपड़ासी भी ब्यूरोक्रेट है, क्लर्क इज ऑल्सो ब्यूरोक्रेट। तो व्हेन यू आर आस्किंग मी ब्यूरोक्रेट को कहां रखे, तुम्हारे दिमाग में कौन है पहले मुझे ये बताओ, तब मैं आंसर दूंगा। Why are innovators SLM negative? Can you give example? Innovators SLM, अच्छा सोशली लेजिटिमेट मीन्स, इनोवेटर्स का नेगेटिव क्यों है? अरे क्योंकि भाई वो एजुकेशन से थोड़ा ना पैसा कमा रहे हैं, तुम मेरे को रिपीट क्यों करवा रहे हो सेम चीज? कुछ नया पूछो ना। अरे दाऊद इब्राहिम जो है वो क्या पढ़ाई लिखाई करके मेहनत करके कमाया है क्या सब कुछ? सारा मनी लॉन्ड्रिंग का पैसा है, इधर का उधर पैसा, उधर इधर, कैसे करके उसने कमाया है? ये लेजिटिमेट मीन्स है क्या? अगर लेजिटिमेट है तो फॉलो करो इसको। इज द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ अमेरिकन ड्रीम बाय C.W. मिल्स। सेम एज दैट वर्ड, यस यस यस, अमेरिकन ड्रीम का कॉन्सेप्ट ये सारे अमेरिकन जितने हैं, C.W. मिल्स, मर्टन, गोल्डनर, ये सब लोग यूज करते हैं. American dream is not a word coined by anyone. American dream is a dream created by Hollywood, which everybody follows. Okay. Okay. अच्छा मुकेश क्या कह रहे हो? आईएएस. आईएएस कौन सा आईएएस? मुकेश, आईएएस सारे एक जैसे हैं क्या भाई? एक बात बताओ, तुम आईएएस बन गए, मैं आईएएस बन गया, क्या हम दोनों एक हो गए जस्ट बिकॉज हम आईएएस हैं? हमारे पर्सनैलिटी टाइप में भी डिफरेंस होएगा थोड़ा बहुत तो. ठीक है, क्या पता तुम वो आईएएस बनो जो कन्फॉर्मिस्ट हो. ठीक है, जितना बॉस ने बोला उतना काम कर दिया. ठीक है, और अपना सैलरी ड्रॉ कर ली. गोल्स प्लस मींस प्लस. क्या पता मैं दूसरे टाइप का आईएएस हूं, मींस से कोई मतलब नहीं. ठीक है, करप्शन कर करके गोल्स पूरे कर रहा हूं. आईएएस कोई एक है क्या? आईएएस भी तो अलग अलग है. कौन से आईएएस की तुम बात कर रहे हो? मर्टन है ये मर्टन, ऐसा नहीं कि कुछ भी कहीं डाल दिया. इसमें बड़ा स्पेसिफिक इंपेरिकल रहना पड़ेगा. ठीक है. नूतन, देर आर फ्यू पीपल हु आर कन्फॉर्मिस्ट बट स्टिल दे बिकम इमोरल एंड क्रिमिनल. अच्छा, ये तो फिर देखो ऐसा है ना, ये जो चीज है कि आज मैं कन्फॉर्मिस्ट हूं, कल क्रिमिनल हूं, और परसों फिर कन्फॉर्मिस्ट बन गया, फिर क्रिमिनल बन गया, ये चीज की बात ही नहीं कर रहे हैं मर्टन. मर्टन किसको एक्सप्लेन कर रहा है? क्राइम रेट एक्सप्लेन कर रहा है कि क्राइम रेट क्यों बढ़ रहा है. वो लोग जो क्रिमिनल हैं, ऐसा नहीं जो कल कन्फॉर्मिस्ट हैं आज क्रिमिनल, फिर परसों कन्फॉर्मिस्ट, ऐसे नहीं. रेगुलरली पैटर्न वे में जो क्राइम करते आए हैं उनकी बात कर रहे हैं मर्टन. ओके. एंड क्राइम इज समथिंग which is very subjective phenomena. Very subjective phenomena. Okay. Rebellion are also labeled as criminals. Gandhi was also labeled as criminal. तभी तो जेल गए थे भाई. विदाउट जेल भाई, सीधी सी बात है, जेल थोड़ा ना ऐसे कोई आम आदमी जाता है. जो क्राइम करेगा वही जाएगा. अब वो जेल गए तो क्रिमिनल तो है ही वो. ठीक है. Every rebellion is labeled at one point of time was labeled as criminal. Nelson Mandela was labeled as terrorist. भगत सिंह टेररिस्ट. तो क्राइम ये थोड़ा ना इसका मतलब कि अब वो क्राइम क्या है फिर. ये बड़ी प्रैक्टिकल बातें करता है मॉर्टन, इसको मैं कल बताऊंगा. ओके, चलो